Hey everybody, we are back with another tip here for Monday Night Tips. And this is in response to a question posted by Tom McClurg about vibrato. So we're going to try to cover a little bit about that. So, vibrato changes from style to style depending on the era and the genre. Vibrato adds character and a more singing-like quality to your sound. So we're going to give you some ideas on how to correctly execute the vibrato. Just a little warning, because this happened to me many years ago. Playing with vibrato can be habit forming. So be aware of this and use it only when necessary.
Yeah, that's great advice. We've all sat next to some people that seemingly can never turn off the vibrato, and also maybe just has the same vibrato throughout, regardless of style of music or the era of music that we're playing. So we're going to talk about a few different ways to execute vibrato, but unfortunately, this being a shorter Monday Night Tips video, we're going to keep it concise, and we're going to talk about the methods of how to execute the different types of vibratos, and not necessarily give examples of that. So the first one I'd like to start with is the hand vibrato. And what's great about this is it doesn't displace your chops. You're not manipulating anything here. You're moving your hand. And we'll show you how to do that in a second. Some great examples of that. Doc Severinsen, from what I understand, Alan Vizzuti only uses a hand vibrato, and he's able to change up the speed, the depth, and I guess how aggressive it is as well, be it a sawtooth type of sound where it's really jagged peaks and valleys, or a more smooth kind of sine wave shape to the vibrato. So there are some variables involved there.
Yeah, now one of the ways let me back up. I had a real hard time learning to use hand vibrato. I started with the mouth vibrato, but when I started using the hand vibrato, I could not get it to go. And so one of the things I think that happens to people is that when we're playing, we'll leave our wrist loose, and your horn really won't shake, it won't pull. So there's a kind of a backwards, back and forth motion that needs to happen. So for me, this is the way I do it. I keep my wrist basically locked, and I use my elbow as the fulcrum here. So I'm just pulling it back and forth and back and forth. So this whole thing is moving. None of this kind of weirdness, because it's really hard to control it. And it's hard to even get it to go with that. Now, Paul, you do it a little bit differently, right?
I do. I actually do keep my wrist loose, because I feel, for me, if I use my whole arm, I'm using too much pressure. And that's just because I probably haven't practiced it as much to get that technique down. So what I do is, I guess I'll turn this way, is I have my thumb right here on my first valve casing, and I think of pushing the horn away from my chops and then just allowing it to come back to that neutral position. So it's kind of like this with my thumb. So there's a couple of ideas of how to use and execute hand vibrato.
Yeah, and this is something that it takes some doing, it takes some practice, let's just talk about a couple of things too. And you mentioned this earlier, Paul. We have the speed and the depth of the vibrato. So depending on the era, which we won't get into all this stuff, but you have classical music, you have big band swing era music, we have more modern jazz, this and that. They're all different. They all have different speeds, and the speed has to do with the era, but it also has to do with the tempo of the music in certain genres. Same with the depth. There are things that you may want a little more shimmery and bright and brilliant, and other things that you might want a little more low-keyed and intimate. So those are the things that make this really unique. So that's something to practice with at different tempos. So for a more intimate type of vibrato, you can use what's called the jaw vibrato, or maybe in some cases the chin or the lip even vibrato. With this type of vibrato, I typically use it for ballads and, more intimate types of playing, but it's more of a yaw, 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 yaw type of feel where I'm opening and closing my jaw. But for me, I got to try to keep that minimum at a very minimum so that I don't displace my embouchure, because this is one of the problems I think that a lot of people experience utilizing this jaw vibrato.
So, and for me, I like to use a tongue vibrato. As Bobby mentioned, the ya, ya, ya. So I'll try to not displace my chin and jaw or my chops, and just sort of keep those in place. And inside my mouth, I'm saying ya, 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 ya with my tongue. And as Bobby mentioned as well, we want to be able to control the speed and the depth, and maybe, as I mentioned also earlier, the sort of aggressiveness or lack of aggressiveness in that. And for me, I feel like I can really control that a lot because, we all practice lip flexibilities, and I use my tongue quite a bit for that. Ah, ee, ah, ee, ah. So this is just a much shallower version of that same sort of thing.
I think the cool thing about the tongue vibrato, one is it's not really spoken about very much that I see out there, and two, it bridges this gap between this brilliant type of vibrato and an intimate vibrato as well. It's something that kind of crosses both those boundaries, and it doesn't displace your chops. So there's just the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot more we can say on this, but this will get you started. Work with a metronome, emulate some of your your favorite players, check them out, and enjoy practicing this, and let us know how it goes for you.